hitting live right now, which means any and every conversation that y'all have will be out to the rest of the world here very quickly.
Oh my goodness.
So that means watch your language.
What are you doing? I've never. You're teaching something that they.
For those who can't make it out at night, they can do it at home.
I'm old school. How much money do we owe?
10 or 12. Nancy and I discussed it yesterday, and she couldn't come to any decision.
Whatever Nancy charged you is fine.
She didn't charge me. She told me that if I really wanted to pay then to find you, you were setting up somewhere. I didn't want to bother you
Okay.
while you were setting up, so
$10 is fine.
Well, I only have cash.
Okay.
And she's got a check. Do you want cash? Or should I wait and put it in the offering?
I'll just put it in the offering plate
well, I have to do right.
because that's where it's going eventually anyway. It's just all going in the
I
safe.
wanna put my
So
flowers.
Hi. So, for anybody who's at home, this is our first attempt at online
So you don't want this?
Bible
You want
study.
an
Hi.
offering plate?
if you, that would be the easiest, so I don't lose it.
I see my original thought isn't going to work so well. So, okay. So,
It's online.
somebody can sit in my spot because I'm just here to make sure everything works.
You're good.
Pastor, you can do whatever with the computer.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, what would I do without you?
Have a headache.
I don't like that either.
I would have a mess.
Never been that session.
That would be what I would have.
Um, for you, the thing that I'd recommend is
didn't
just go
see it
back and forth
coming.
between your two
Hi,
cameras.
I didn't see you come in.
Oh, okay.
Well, the microphone is sitting right. The microphone is sitting right here.
Okay.
So,
make sure I
actually,
talk
you're in
into
the
that way.
perfect spot because you're nowhere near the camera. Or like, you're just to the side of the camera, so you'll never be on said camera. Somebody is welcome to this chair,
Where's the camera?
right there. Sitting in a.
Well,
Oh.
he's sitting there.
I will sit over
So
here.
guys, this,
I don't
Yeah.
think anybody's
The
sitting
only
there.
spot that actually needs to be broken is right here, just so the camera can actually see everybody. So, what I'm gonna
Do
do.
we have to be able to see that?
oh, I do have to see this?
Are we supposed to be?
Oh, well, I can turn around long, it's not gonna be the whole time, is it? Oh, I'll tell you what,
Folding chairs.
I shall move over here, because this is bigger. Are you over this one?
I'm pretty sure you're correct. So.
There's chairs in the sound, too.
There's right there.
Oh, yeah.
Someone be signing in.
This is
Or is
wonderful.
that to take notes?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Might need to change rooms.
Or did you bring me one? Can I have a piece of it?
There's a chair.
There's a chair right there. Oh, just for you.
Have we started? I finally
I'm gonna
got
grab a
Jim's
book.
phone to work. He
Oh,
has a phone you can call and talk to Jim.
yay.
I just have to give him the phone. Want it now or later? I'll give it to you later.
Okay. Is he feeling better?
He was looking really good today. The chaplain that had come to our house when he was there, she was with me through both my knee surgeries.
Yeah.
So she's seen me at my meanest. And Jim and I both were in a very good mood today. And she showed up. And he's doing well.
Good.
Still dealing with hallucinations. It's interesting to hear every day what his hallucination was. He's learned to tell himself that if they don't answer back, or you can't touch it, it's not real.
Oh. Poor guy. when Owen was a baby, my dad had heart surgery, and so we went up to see him up at the hospital, and they had him on pain meds, and so he was having like hallucinations, and so he seemed pretty loose, pretty good. We're talking to him, and then all of a sudden he looks at us and he goes, "What's Cleo doing?" And Cleo was our cat, and we go, "What?" He goes, "Cleo is on that shelf. What is she doing?" And we're like, "Dad, Cleo's at home." "Don't tell me she's at home. I'm looking right there. And we go, "Oh, well, you know what? I think it's time for us to go."
Excuse me for 1 second. Okay, so we can hear everything, so you're good. But what I would do is just remind everybody, hey, if you have questions, type them into the chat, you're able to see them.
Oh, that's right. So if you're watching at home and you have any questions, if you just type into the comments whatever question you have, I will be able to see it on my computer right here.
Or tell Pastor, hi, I'm logged in from home. Who's logged in from home? And that way he can see, say hello.
Yes, absolutely. Same as I know some folks do on Sundays, where they type in and say, "Hi, we're here," and then we can see who is watching at home. And I'll ask Brian this because he's the expert.
I wouldn't go that far.
After this is done, does it automatically save?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to watch it later, they can rewatch it.
correct. It will be much easier to find on the church on YouTube as opposed to Facebook.
Okay. So just go to the church's page on YouTube and it'll be there and you
Yeah.
can watch it.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and I will pass out some handouts for everyone. And it's not homework, so obviously, I'm only going to grade it a little bit. No. Right. And did everybody get a book?
Yes, and how much are books?
Well, I believe $10. Or
That's what you
or
told me.
or however much Nancy can get out of you.
She has loan shark days, I know.
Yeah, I know. It's like some days it's like
All right, I just have to.
Did you get one, Nancy? Elaine, did you get one, sweetie?
I did.
Thank you. Would you like us to pay you now, or would you prefer like do Ezekiel, or how would you prefer?
just throwing it in the plate or Ezekiel is easier. Then I don't have to worry about losing it.
That sounds perfect. I'll do it right now, as we're sitting, ready to start.
So
Was that losing it or using it?
I'll ask the first question.
Yeah.
Everybody's probably wondering how long are they going to be watching online? So, how long? How long is the Bible study on an average night?
an hour. Because after about 7:30, Pastor Rick gets cranky. So, so it'll be about an hour. But so at my when I was packing up at the my last full-time church, I opened up a book and I found money that somebody had given me years before for a Bible study. I mean, like years before. So, yeah. All right.
Silver certificates?
Yeah, well, it was pretty close. It had been in there quite a while. So, all right. So, of course, we're doing Restored, Finding Redemption in Our Mess by Tom Berlin. And just a little background. Tom Berlin, as it says on the back of the book, was pastor at Florence United Methodist Church in VA in Virginia, but now he is a bishop. So this book's a couple years old, and since then he's been elected bishop. So he writes some pretty good stuff. Why don't we go ahead and we'll get started. Let's Let's start with a prayer. Let us pray. Holy God, it amazes us that you love us enough to have created us in your image. We are sorry that we allow sin to damage the beauty of your image within us. Guide us along this journey. Help us to clearly see the sin in our own lives. Grant us courage and wisdom as we accept the mess we have made. Show us how to take steps to clean up the mess. Thank you for the opportunity to be restored into a right relationship with you. Amen. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll get started with video here. And this one's a little shorter than the others, just because it's kind of an intro here.
Maybe. Don't forget to hit play. Hit full screen. There you go.
There's a lot of room for humility in the salvage yard, because everybody here has the same problem. Something's banged up or broken or worse. Like this guy right here. This is a real mess. You open up the hood, you discover there's nothing inside. Everyone here has a story. Some brought it on themselves. Running a red light, sending that last text message, driving too fast. All of a sudden you've got a real mess. Others were not even in motion when it happened. They were just idling, minding their own business, and wham, someone else smashes into them. Our lives are similar. Our messes have many manifestations, but the origin is all the same. The Bible calls it sin. And sin happens when life is out of sync with God. Sometimes it's direct disobedience to God's commandments, just like running a red light. Other times we become reckless. We fail to adopt the way of life that Jesus teaches, or we ignore the wisdom that the Bible offers for our habits, our work, our relationships. Whenever there is sin, there's going to be something broken as a result. Some sins are so persistent and long-term, they create dysfunction and ongoing pain in life that'll take a long time to work out. Others are more incidental, and they can be remedied far more quickly. There are a lot of cars that aren't here right now, and these cars are rolling along without a care in the world. They're driving around towns and down country lanes, but this is no reason for pride. If you drive around long enough, you're going to end up with a mess somewhere. Could just be a ding or a scratch in the grocery store parking lot. Likely, there's going to be a big old dent in your future, an accident that's right now just waiting to happen. And that may take you off the road for a period of time. Repairs will have to be made, parts replaced. Most people are like cars. At one time, we were brand spanking new and everything worked just right. But the way we were is no longer the way we are. Get to know us and you'll discover the mess. Live long enough and you will get banged up. Think about yourself, your life and your relationships as they are right now. Is there any zone in your life that feels like it's just messy? That's what the next several weeks are going to challenge you to consider. Sometimes it's obvious enough that everybody knows about it. Other times it's just our own little secret. The worst is when we have a mess in our lives and we can't see it, but other people can. There's only one way to fix a mess. You have to take a good look at it. Recently, our daughter was rear-ended while in stop-and-go traffic on an interstate, and she asked me what she should do. I said, go to the body shop. Somebody's going to come out, and they're going to make a very thorough inspection. Then they can tell you what it's going to take to fix it. About 200 years ago, a group of people came together for the hard work of self-examination. Their leader was a guy named John Wesley. Later, they would be called the Methodists. And Wesley helped them by giving them a set of questions that enabled them to think about their life. They were tough questions. Questions like, do I disobey God in anything? Am I a slave to dress, friends, work, or habits? Am I jealous, impure, critical, irritable, touchy, or distrustful? Is there anyone whom I fear, dislike, disown, criticize, or hold a resentment toward? Do I grumble or complain constantly? There are about 20 questions just like that. Those questions help people confess the mess. Questions help them begin a process that would lead to being salvaged and restored. So how about you? I bet you're not really like any of the cars here. This is really the end of the line for most of these vehicles. But I'd also bet that you're not in showroom condition. Can you think of some part of your life or some relationship that you hold that really is in need of attention and repair?
All right. And Sonia says she's not getting any sound.
We can figure that one out later.
All right. We will work on getting you some sound. All right. So imagine a showroom of new cars, then imagine a junkyard filled with cars that have been in accidents. So the setting of this video, of course, was a junkyard, and he compares a car that has been messed up in a wreck to our lives that are messed up by sin. So how does Tom Berlin define sin in the video? Anybody catch how he defines sin?
Being out of sync with God.
Yeah, being out of sync with God. Being out of sync with God, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Sometimes we refer to sin as, being off target or being alienated from God, if you will, but out of sync is kind of a good way of looking at it. Which of Tom Berlin's comments about the life of an automobile also describes your life?
Some of the parts don't work so well anymore.
I was going to say that exact same thing.
Bunch of
Some of the parts don't work
dings
so
and.
well.
I don't have the new knees yet, Ricky, like you. Aw.
Yeah, it's like I was just telling somebody this week for the first time last Saturday. I was squeezing stuff, I was taking some stuff up, and I go upstairs and I'm like, why are my thumbs hurting? What did I? And I Googled it. It was arthritis. I'm like, what happened? What happened? I don't know. So some parts don't work so well anymore. Maybe a little squeakier than they used to be.
That sounds.
Yeah.
That's true.
Bunch of dings and dents and.
Dings, yeah. Sometimes I wonder, kind of like a car as it gets kind of older, am I still as useful as I used to be? You know, sometimes, you know, you feel like that older car that's kind of was super cool 20 years ago and is super important, but now it's kind of dated and kind of sits there. Nobody does much with it, you know.
And to wonder what that answer would be, we have no blue book. There's no way that we can go and look us up to see what our worthiness might be on the open market anymore.
True.
We have to figure that out for ourselves. We're one doctor's appointment away from being told something we didn't know.
Well, yeah, the doctor's appointment brought up what I was just thinking too, is the older the car gets, the more maintenance it needs, and the more money we have to put into it to keep it running, and to keep moving, and to keep working.
But if you
that's how you
get
two
old
stay in
enough
business.
as that car, and it's desirable, it can be worth an awful lot of money.
That's right.
And people are waiting in line at auctions to buy it, so, you know, you have to figure it out.
So can you think of some part of your life or maybe some relationship you have that really is in need of attention and repair? Now that's kind of a personal one, so, you know, if somebody wants to share, that's great, but obviously I'm not gonna go around the room and say, you know.
Well, I always have to have a tune-up, and usually Bible studies help me with that. I can go in, it's a kind of a diagnostic for me.
Yeah. Kind of see what's going on and where you can improve, and you know, there's always some part of your life that, you know, you're trying to improve. You know, for me, it's all right. I'll tell on myself. So this is the second day of Lent, right? And I've already failed.
Oh, no.
So, so I decided this year I was going to try my hand at fasting, right? And part of this is because I worked with a lot of Muslim kids last year, and they all were fasting for Ramadan, and most of them did pretty well, you know, from sunup to sundown, and, you know, comparing the Ramadan to Lent, because the kids would ask me about Christian stuff. And so this year I'm thinking, you know what? If John Wesley, it was good enough for John Wesley, it's good enough for me. So, yeah, well, that didn't even last 2 days. So, because I ate before I came. So, so that's something in my life that I definitely want to work at and improve on. Okay. Now the book. We're going to get more into here in just a second, but let's do some Bible reading here. And this chapter is really based on 2 different verses. The first is Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. And would somebody mind reading that? Luke 18, 9 through 14.
Is that this part right here?
Yep.
Okay. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. he would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and say, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all of those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
So that's a passage that I'm sure most of us have heard once or twice in our lives. There's a lot of fodder there for sermons. So, what was the attitude of the Pharisee when he prayed? What kind of attitude did he have?
He was gloating.
Okay.
Self-righteous.
Yeah.
And self-righteous. Yes. Now, how do I ask this without like, people pointing in
I always
judgment?
love
No.
when he pauses.
Yeah.
I'm really, like, it always makes me like, what's he gonna say?
So, have any of you ever known somebody like that? And if they're in this room, don't point at them. Yeah, you know, just.
I think that at any given time, we're all capable of having an attitude that we know more than the rest of the folks. If you're set in your ways and you have an opinion that you know you've figured out, you've pondered it, you've prayed about it, and, you know, there are only so many knowings that we can absorb in one lifetime, and depending on where we are in our lives and what's going on, I think we're all capable of being arrogant and clueless about certain things and not taking other people's hearts and souls in mind.
It's easier to look at other people than to look at myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it is so much easier to look at other people and just to feel like, well, could be worse. I could be that person, you know, rather than, you know, be introspective and say, well, you know, I'm not perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, sometimes people in churches can get a little bit, how do I say, self-righteous, especially if somebody has an issue of some sort. I remember a number of years ago, had a church member whose son, he never really came to church. I just knew she had one. And he was about my age, so we would have been in like early to mid 30s at the time. And what happened is in the next little town over from us. So our little town was here, and then there was a couple of hills, and then the little town. He was over in that next little town, and he and a couple other guys were making meth. They were in a meth lab, and it exploded, as apparently they do. He ended up walking down the main street of that little town on fire, like fully engulfed, until somebody knocked him down and put him out, and they had to life flight him up to OSU to the burn center. And it was bad. He had 3rd-degree burns, and it was bad. And so went up to visit him up there, and one of the few times that I actually thought I was going to pass out. I could never be a physician. I'm just telling you. No. You know, and so the next Sunday, I still remember this. We did Joys and Concerns, where like people would stand up, and we did like the Phil Donahue with the microphone, you know. And so you got to be kind of careful with that, because you never know what's going to come out of someone's mouth sometimes, you know, when there isn't a filter there. And so somebody had raised this guy up for prayer, and we prayed for him, and then after the service, I had several people walk up to me and say, "Yeah, that's a real shame about so and so, but you know what? He got what he deserved." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And it was and it was very, very clear that there were people who were not at all sympathetic to what had occurred. And obviously they hadn't been up to the hospital to see what he was like. It was pretty bad. You know, that always struck me. Just like, how can you be that? I mean, yeah, he was doing something he should not have been doing. Trust me. Yeah, that's horrible. But it's also this person you know and claim to care about. That's their child.
Right.
You know, I mean, yeah, he's made some really bad decisions, but you know,
Nobody deserves that.
nobody deserves to have third-degree burns over, like, you know, whatever percent. I mean, it was a lot. It was he was up there at the OSU Burn Center for 6 months. I mean, it was a long time, and then he ended up having to go to rehab and have a bunch of surgeries. And then after all that was over, they still sent him to prison, and because for some reason he thought he wasn't going to go to prison because, and apparently no, that isn't how it works. See, you still get sent to prison. They just sent him to the medical facility there in South Columbus, and that's where he was. So as I always tell Nancy, I always have these really super depressing stories. And then I just walk away, don't I? I go, I was like, so super depressed, and then I go, "Okay, Nancy, I'm going back to my office now." And she's just like, "Oh, thanks."
You need like little videos of babies and puppies to pull up at any point in the day.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like counteract the stories.
I do have a lot of animal videos I'm showing you. Yeah, I do.
Animals and babies. And my heart goes out to the mother who every single day, probably every breath she takes, lives with heartache.
Oh yeah.
And that would be hard to get over or get through or whatever you get when something like that happens to you.
Yeah, well, it really was, because that gentleman lost custody. He had, I guess, visitation with his kids. Totally lost that, and so the grandma really, or, you know, his mom never really got to see the grandkids, and it was very painful. Very, and then he ends up getting convicted and going to prison after all of this for a couple of years, and yeah, it was just, you know, kind of an eye-opener of, you know, just because you're in a church doesn't necessarily mean people are going to be maybe as
His life was ruined.
Oh yeah.
Totally. And in some ways hers as well.
Yes.
Because we don't get pregnant and then carry a baby to full term, giving birth to that baby, thinking, well, I want this future that was his for that baby. None of us want
Oh, no.
anything like that.
Oh no, absolutely. It's, you know, I always try to remember, you know, everyone is somebody's baby, somebody's child, and, you know, for sure, they're a child of God, but, you know, there's somebody else, somebody's loved one, you know, or even sometimes you kind of wonder, you know, as a pastor, you always see that there's certain people within a congregation that tend to have a little more drama going on in their life. Now, in our particular situation, not as much as in other churches I've been at, but you know, and sometimes people look at others and you see the eye rolls, like, oh, she's standing up with another prayer concern, and I know that because you hear it, Pastor, we got to do something about so-and-so who's got a prayer concern every Sunday. I've had that. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? You know?
Tell him you'll pray for him.
So, all right, we have a one prayer a month rule for you. You know,
Choose wisely.
yeah, choose wisely. You've got one prayer, right? You know, I mean, what do you do?
I don't think the issue is whether that guy got what he deserved or not. I think the issue is we may get what we all deserve too, and that's very frightening.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you are so right.
It's not for us to say.
Yeah.
Our judgment didn't cause that. I
No.
didn't even know the story until tonight, but
No.
it's not for me to say, to sit in judgment.
But you're right though. It can be very very frightening for folks to see. Oh my gosh, that happened to that person. That could happen to me, right? You know, maybe something could happen to me, and yeah, and so sometimes it comes out as, you know, being maybe judgmental because you want to somehow emotionally or psychologically push yourself away from, you know, the possibility that maybe I might make some bad decisions, and next thing you know, because, well, I've talked to Nancy about this, haven't I? I would not do well in prison. Remember, we had that conversation. We did have that conversation, yeah. That, you know, I was like, man, I would not do well in prison, and she agreed. Yeah.
Yes, I don't recommend
I
it.
don't think anybody would.
We really should record our conversations that we have in the office. Because,
I paid for that podcast.
yeah,
Very
it's
entertaining.
poor Nancy. She never gets anything done. But,
I think she gets a lot done.
oh,
It's like I could do my job in 3 hours.
she does. She probably has to come in when I'm not here. So, what was the attitude of the tax collector when he prayed?
Humility.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Humility?
And he stood back. He didn't want to get close to all the good folks. He stood back. That was in the book.
Yeah, he allowed, you know, his vulnerability before God, right? And you know, God, I'm just who I am. I have faults. Have mercy on me, a sinner. And admitting that you're a sinner isn't always easy, especially when you're admitting it to God, right? Because, like, I like to think I'm a good person, right? And so I never want to admit that I do anything wrong. I mean, I don't, but okay, maybe once or twice, right? A day, an hour. So, which one was justified or granted a right relationship with God after his prayer? Was it the Pharisee or was it the tax collector, and why?
The tax collector, because he admitted he was a sinner and asked for mercy and forgiveness.
He was humble.
Yes.
Sometimes that's really hard to be.
It really is hard.
And some of it's what you grow up with. I grew up in a very judgmental church, and as an adult, I can't break that habit. It's very hard.
Well, I gave up judgment, even in thought, for Lent one year. There was not one day of Lent, all 40 of those days I failed. Because I have my little spreadsheet of debits and credits and who said what and what happened and how they drive and all of that. And there was not one day that I didn't sit in judgment. But I got better at it because I didn't want to have to go to the Lord in prayer and say, I'm sorry one more time.
I wish I could judge and keep my mouth shut.
Judge, but just not share.
That's why I added the even in thought. Because, no, that's the thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's that sharing part that'll get you in trouble, you know.
So my question would be, why did God grant the taxpayer insight, but he didn't grant the Pharisee insight? Or did he grant the Pharisee insight and he just rejected it?
That is a really, really good question. I would think that the Pharisee just ignored it because I think he didn't think he needed it.
Their hearts were different.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That would make a really good sermon, actually. It really would. That's a really good question because, you know, why?
You want a royalty.
Yeah.
The Pharisees on the
Yeah.
inside of the church, the synagogue, and the tax collectors outside the church, or on the back pew, and nobody even saw him come in and go home. I think once we're so involved in our church and the teaching, you think you know more than anybody else.
Well, that's a great point, because in
Yeah,
politics and government, the biggest danger is when you start believing your own press releases.
Yeah.
That's when things get rough. And yeah, that's probably true. He's believing his own press release.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to remember that, like when people say, "Oh, you did a good job," which I appreciate. Don't get me wrong, totally appreciate it, 100%. But as you said, sometimes you end up beginning or believing your own press, right? And then next thing you know, you think you're doing really, really great because, well, of course I do, right?
But it only takes one person saying, you know, could we talk about that one part of your message this morning? I disagree with you, and I'm not sure that you biblically are attached to what you, I mean, it only takes one person making those kinds of comments.
You do tend to remember negative stuff more than you do the positive. At least I do. But you know, I always try to like temper it all and just like, Chris, remember, yes, that might have gone well, but that's actually the Holy Spirit, you know. And while you might have had a part in it, don't start thinking, you know, you're all that in a, you know, in a bag of chips. You know, because I've, you know, known of some pastors that thought that, and something. Well, I'm sure you've heard stories too, right? And then it goes south. Because next thing you know, you start thinking you don't have to worry about, you know, trying to be a good pastor or a Christian, and you know, and whatever you do is just fine, and then you forget the fact that you're a sinner too, right? Yeah, but I won't share any negative stories. So any depressing stories, because you all have had enough. So let's read Genesis 1. What's one? Can you read Genesis 1:27?
I can do that.
Sure.
So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them.
Okay. So what does it mean to be created in God's image?
I think you have that spark of divine inspiration inside you.
Yeah.
I think they use the word light in the book. at one
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Same idea. Divine spark, light, but that there's something unique, something special in everyone. But as you drive down the road, you sometimes wonder, right? or as you live life, sometimes you're like, huh, does that person really have? I'm not so sure that person was made in the image of God, right?
But maybe that person was just covered up by all the grime and the dirt and the dust and the age and the timing of, at that moment in time, they started out. Very few babies are mean-spirited and nasty and unable to, I mean.
It sounds like you read the chapter.
I did.
I'm like,
Yeah, I gave up procrastination for once.
well, you're doing better than I am. So, so if we look here, there's a couple of excerpts from the first chapter, along with the very famous painting of the Sistine Chapel, and that's of course God giving the divine spark to Adam. And all right, before I continue, have any of you seen this in real life? That's what I thought. You guys just saw it in real life, right? So, like in real life, how big is this painting?
It covers the entire wall. It's big.
See,
Yeah, it covers the entire section.
So it's big.
Yeah,
It's big, big.
but you're pretty far from it,
but you're pretty far from it,
because
yeah.
the high ceiling.
Oh, okay.
High ceiling. And I will say, the other thing is you're crammed in with like 500 other people. It's not a huge
Oh, more
room.
than that.
And you're crammed in with 500 or 600 people all milling around, staring at them, looking at it.
It isn't bright and colorful now since they restored it.
But it is very bright and colorful.
So, would somebody like to read that first excerpt from the book?
I can do that.
Okay.
The image consists of two hands. The one on the right is the hand of God reaching toward Adam, trying to make contact and infuse him with life. The hand on the left belongs to Adam, who reaches feebly back, fingers slack, as if thinking, I don't know. I kind of maybe want what God is offering, sort of. Not sure. I hope to get around to it. I need to think about it a while. It's not really a word. That's kind of how I heard it.
So, what do you think causes us to put off a close personal relationship with the Lord?
I think we have to give up an awful lot.
Yeah, I think we want the best of it.
I don't wanna give it all up.
I think where our priorities lie, what we let take our time, or our focus, maybe,
Sure.
instead of him.
And the world steers us away. At least on my TV.
Constant distraction.
There's not a whole lot of let's move closer to God. It's mostly let's go to the world stuff.
Oh boy. God is that still small voice, and the world is so loud. That's true.
But if you put it on mute or turn it off, you got half a chance.
Oh my gosh, I can't turn it off. I don't sleep well.
Yeah, there is a lot of distraction, at least for me, and you were saying, but it takes work, right? And sometimes other things seep in to your priorities, and next thing you know, wow, I haven't read the Bible in like a week, But boy, I haven't missed a cat or dog video, right? Or whatever it is that you're doing. Do you ever feel unworthy to have a relationship with God?
more distant. As opposed to close. But not necessarily because of unworthiness.
How about fear of failure?
What'd you say?
Fear of failure.
Mm-hmm. Or comparing yourself to
Yeah,
other
that's hard.
Christians.
That's hard not to do that.
Mhm.
It really is. But we all have our own journey and our own relationship. And I think our relationships could be a lot stronger with God if we don't compare it. Like, I was thinking about this today, like, the last Bible study we had, I'm like, I don't know, I don't understand that in the Bible, I don't know it as well, and I think, well, somebody else knows it better than I do, and then I think bad about myself, but that, we're all in different places. And our relationship, he just wants us to be in relationship with him. I don't think it has to be like, okay, this many minutes, and, that's not how it is, and I think if we just focus on him, it'll all come together, it doesn't have to be the same as somebody else does.
Yeah, I think comparing yourself to somebody else is always a problem, right? In many different areas, right? I don't know if did you ever like listen to like Dave Ramsey or like Susie Orman or any of those financial people?
Of course.
And but yeah, and it's always like, hi Dave, I'm a 30-year-old. Well, what's your household income? Well, my wife and I, we bring $280,000 a year, and we got $500,000 saved up and this and that, and you're just like, what? Wow. I am like a total loser. What am I doing? And I think sometimes we do the same thing even with our spiritual life, right? We like, here's somebody that's doing wonderful things in their faith, and you're like, oh, I don't do that. Oh my gosh, I'm a loser. What is going on, right? But we're all different, right? We're all at different places, and God's calling us to do different things, right?
Well, and when you can get to a place, when you're looking at 77 and you know people and you watch them, I see myself as a cheerleader for people who are excelling in any part of their lives. And so when I can be a cheerleader and celebrate people's success, knowing full well that everybody's got something. The prayer circle lady knows a little bit about it. I hold a lot in confidence, and just because you look all shiny and okay and fully functioning outside doesn't mean that you are. And so that's where the love of Christ comes in, and that's so if I can be a conduit of the love and the light, and truly take joy in people's lives, I'm never going to compare myself with anybody because I'm not above it. I'm past it, and I've learned some lessons along the way. Because there comes a time when you walk into a room and you're not the prettiest girl in the room anymore. You're, at best, you're the cute little old great-grandma who everybody loves.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, being a cheerleader for other people I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so important, but boy, hard to do though sometimes because
It's easier though, and after a while, when you know that it means when you edify someone or you validate someone, and you know how much it meant to them when you do it, then you tend to do it more. And sometimes I'm oblivious about all of it, and I'm just living in my own little melodrama, and I'm not even thinking about you. But sometimes I do think about you, and I let you know it. I let you know when you touched me. And that, I think I think we all need to be people's cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You may be the only person that tells someone that you're thinking about them. That may be the only thing that they hear that day, that week, that month. I mean,
Well, my goal here in this church is to be the little old lady that when somebody's 77 and they're thinking back, they were a 4 or 5-year-old in this building when the little old lady noticed they were in the room and it mattered to her. And, that's my goal.
yeah.
What you were talking about as far as income
Yeah.
goes, you can't really compare yourself to those people because of being older. I started at $1.50 an hour, where now they're starting at $50,000 a year. So
It's a little bit different.
yes.
Yeah. 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 Yay, inflation. I feel better about myself now. But comparing yourself, for either good or bad, right? Is always a challenge for Christians, right? Jesus had that parable where, somebody was complaining because they were making more money than they were, right? And Jesus, and in the parable, the guy who was, the foreman's like, didn't you get what you were promised? Yeah. Well, then what are you complaining about? I'm paraphrasing, but what does it matter to you if I'm paying this person more than I'm paying you? It's my money and I can do what I want, but what was obviously a comparison to God's grace, and that God can love whoever God wants, even somebody who is maybe in our eyes not as worthy. Who would like to read that next little excerpt there where it says, "When you stand"?
Sure. When you stand in the Sistine Chapel and look at the piece, your eye will inevitably compare the figure of God in active pursuit to the figure of Adam in passive repose.
Right. When have you felt God pursuing a relationship with you?
I'd say this current job I have, because I had no interest in it, and I was content doing what I was doing. But I went to a Christmas party that I didn't particularly want to go to, because it was after work and it was like 9 o'clock, but they were friends and it wasn't that far, so I go to the Christmas party. And I'm at the Christmas party, and the administrator for the agency's there, and she says, "Hey, do you know anybody that might be interested in this position?" And I said, "No, not really." And but tell me a little bit about it, and I'll ask around. So she told me a little bit about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, what are the odds on just wandering into some Christmas party you don't want to go to and having someone tell you there's this job available? So the odds on that are pretty low. So maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. So I took the job. And I think a lot of miracles aren't contradictions of natural law. I think miracles are odds. What are the odds on this happening?
Yep. Yeah, you're right. It's like if you just sometimes stand back and go, what would the odds that this would fall into place here or this would fall into place here? Not real good. Yeah, more than like, there's a big bright light and something falls from the sky or something, right? Yeah, I was funny. You talk about that job. It was it this past week, maybe 2 weeks ago, when I talked about my calling to the ministry. But it's the same thing, right? God's chasing you, and God calls you, and you know when it happens, and it is kind of strange, when God talks to you or calls you and calls to you. And so, like, recently, I had I'm sitting there at my desk, and I'm just doing my thing, and I get this feeling that I need to call somebody. I don't know if any of you have ever had this. And it's like, well, that's odd. That's not really what I'm doing right now. And so you start putting it off, right? You're like, well, I'll do that at 12:30 or whatever. And you're like, oh, nope, that's not going away. I really, really need to do that now. And so you pick up the phone and you call the person, and then they say, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you called. We are just walking out the door to go to the hospital. Well, what happened? Let me tell you what happened. And I've had that happen like a couple, 3 times in like the last month. And it's really, really kind of cool and kind of odd all at the same time, right? It's cool because, I mean, what were the chances of that just randomly happening? But it's also kind of odd that, that it happened to me. And it's a little disconcerting because that means when I have that feeling, that means I have to do what God's calling me to do. And I really sometimes just want to ignore what God's saying, because I'm really hungry and I really would rather go to lunch. But,
I mean, sometimes it's the finger of God, and sometimes it's a slap upside the head.
it's like, hey, what are you doing? So, why do you think it's important for us to realize that God pursues us? Or, to put it in a different way, I guess, is how does it make you feel to know that God is pursuing you? Special?
Yeah.
Blessed?
You think about, like, if you have a relationship, whether it's like a romantic or a friendship or anything, and I'm sure we've all had this, where you feel like you're more interested than the other person. And then you start to realize, they don't really want to be with me. I feel like I just keep nagging them and don't want to be that. It's so much nicer to be on the other side of that they really want to be with me. They really want me in their life. And that's how God is for us. We're not the annoying, and then we're the other person usually that, I'm not giving you time and I'm not paying enough attention to you. But that's hard when you're in relationships like that, where you just feel like you want it more than the other.
Yeah,
Very
wanted,
Oh, yeah.
loved.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than thinking that somebody really isn't all that interested in having a relationship with you. Especially if that person is the creator of the universe.
Big one.
Yeah, that's kind of a downer. But the fact that, God does want to have a relationship with you and is actively pursuing you and doesn't necessarily take no for an answer is...
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
I argued for 6 weeks in a row with him, trying to explain debits and credits and columns of this doesn't work out. To go and be a special needs nanny for a child who was born with cancer wrapped around her spine, I don't have a degree in that. My degree is in something else. And when I went in and said I was quitting my job, my boss said, are you going to be happy being a nanny? And I said, I don't know. All I know is that I'm not going to be happy if I refuse to be the nanny, because God kept, it was just like, no, I want you to move from Kentucky back to Ohio, and I want you to do this. And I kept explaining to God, you haven't crunched the numbers, this is not right. And he wouldn't listen to me, and he just kept wooing and pursuing, and it was the best blessing of my entire life. But I don't feel guilty for arguing with him that. I figure I was the obstinate child, and let the little children come to me. He understood and was like, oh, it'll be okay. She's gonna be okay.
Every family has one.
Yeah, like, I knew she would do this. I knew this was part of the plan.
Yeah, I see. I forget who I tell my stories to and who I don't. I should really write these things down so I don't bore people. I'll become my dad. Anyway, I was talking to Owen's teacher a couple weeks ago, and she was telling me that she motivates him at school by letting him look at pictures of her daughter, because apparently he's quite taken, and but she's 20, and she has a lot of special needs, a lot like Owen, and so she's telling me about this girl's 20, and his teacher is 24, 25. She just graduated from college. And so she's telling me the story about having this 20-year-old daughter. And like many of us, when somebody seems relatively young and is telling you about having a kid, you automatically start doing the math in your head. But this time it came up to be preschool. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. So you're like, well, how do I ask this question without... And then eventually they realize you're thinking the question. And it turns out she was this girl's teacher. And when she was doing her student teaching, special education, this girl was in her class. She was in high school. And she lived in an institution. She was, a ward of the state, if you will. And she was institutionalized for her whole life. And then her parents gave her up when she was young because they couldn't take care of her, didn't want to take care of her, no family, whatever. And so this Owen's teacher started taught her, and then when she became a full-time teacher, she tutored her for a while, and then when she graduated from college and moved back up here to Central Ohio, she's like, I can't leave her. God won't let me leave her down there. She's going to be in that institution by herself, and she said that she just had this special bond. As soon as we meant to be together, God wants me to be with her, and so, she's young, and so she moved back in with her parents so she could save money and applied to become this girl's guardian, and she is adopting her, and she's saving up money, and they're building a house that's going to be handicap accessible, and they are going to be moving in. And she's telling me that this is a story, right? And about how God is using her, and she just felt God brought them together and all this. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not crying. I got something stuck in my eye. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And of course, Owen just loves this teacher because I mean, she's really got a heart for folks. But it was her whole story about, how God is using her, and that she feels that this girl is a blessing to her much more than she's a blessing to this girl, even though this girl's nonverbal, a lot like Owen and all this, and that's when I also found out that my son likes girls in pink wheelchairs with big bows in their hair. So
That's how you find things out.
you do, and then I asked him, I go, are you being motivated at school to do your work by getting to look at pictures of a pretty girl? And he was like, he got kind of mad and kind of huffed and rolled over in his bed. He was like, I don't want to talk about this. And I was like, okay then, well. So, yeah.
That's more than I get from my son.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I got the huff. And I'm like, oh, okay then.
How old is he again?
17.
Age appropriate.
It's age appropriate. Yeah. Yeah. And so I was like, well, yeah, but apparently he likes older women, but she's not necessarily into younger dudes. So it's okay. But so does anybody have any questions or anything? Next week we'll be looking at chapter 2.
So should we read up to read chapter 2?
Chapter 1 of course goes with tonight. And that would be appropriate. Chapter 2 would be helpful for next week.
You have it on video, audio.
Actually, I do on my computer because I downloaded it.
Because some of us can't stay awake to read.
I got the
Twice
It
before I
might be
came
an
here.
audiobook, you never know.
Yeah.
I like a lot
I
of
Actually, it
listen to
might-
audiobooks in my car
let me see.
when I'm driving. I don't listen to the radio.
it might
I just-
even be on Audible. Let me see.
Yeah.
Because I gotta tell you, I listen to almost all my books now because
It's so interesting to listen to books, to have it read to you.
Especially by the author.
Oh, yes, that, and a
I love that.
a biography, when they read it themselves, you feel like you're with them.
Oh, yeah.
It's so amazing.
Although I will say, I read chapter 1 and I enjoy his conversational way of expressing himself. And right from the very beginning, he's talking about the 3 kinds of grace and prevenient.
We can read
I
at
mean,
work tomorrow
I had
between
an
lunches to each
immediate
other.
Emmaus walk connection with him, and so I'm really enjoying. But I'm a tactile visual. I got rid of my Kindle after 4 books because I just couldn't turn the pages and touch them.
But Dale gets up at 4 o'clock, so 4 a.m. So, in all honesty, I can see why she can't keep her eyes open to read.
I can't even watch TV with Bentley after work because I fall asleep and I feel bad for him, but I just can't do it.
some of his other books are, but not this one.
I'll have her read it to me
Margie will read
tomorrow.
it to you.
In between our lunches, I'll have
There
her
you
read
go.
it to me. We'll
a good
both
idea.
we'll both get it done and
Well, and I like his approach to the subject, that we're not gonna talk about Christians who are perfect and shiny and wonderful and have it all together and have all the answers. He addresses that right up front, and I need that. I don't need the, send me your money and I will make sure you get to heaven. I don't want those glitzy preacher dudes and dudettes that make it sound like everything's wonderful. All you have to do is be saved once, the light switch is turned on, and see, I'm a dimmer switch. I can get real dark, but I can get real bright, and it just depends on what I'm doing at the time and where my heart is. And so he's really a good writer, I think. I like the way he writes.
Yeah, he is. So are you saying that you're not gonna send your seed money to me?
Well, it depends on what it's.
Because
for.
remember, you need to plant the seed and then it will grow. And name it, claim it.
Could be glitzier. I think glitzy was the word. you
Yeah,
used, right?
I
Glitzy.
personally, I am claiming my new helicopter. I don't need a jet because I have no place to land the jet, but I could land the helicopter in the field behind my house, and you could pick me up. Yep. Every pastor needs his own helicopter.
And jet airplane, and 3 mansions and their beach house.
There you go.
You know, so it's just like, I'd rather have a messy kind of
Not
message.
allowed to do that at work.
All right, let's go ahead and close in prayer. Dear God, we thank you for accepting us how we are, with rust and dents and all. Lord, we just pray that we can be of use to you, no matter how we are, Lord, thank you for all that you do for us. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Go ahead and turn off the online stuff.
Now we can go to bed.
Okay, Alex is flying into
Now
Cleveland.
we're gonna go home and read.
So that we can go to
Gotta
the
go home and
game
read.
and get the bobblehead of